Do narcissists believe their own bullshit? The answer can be somewhat complex. It largely depends on particular scenarios, and oftentimes, they're more trying to fool themselves than to fool you. But I'm going to attempt to keep this as simple and scientific as possible without veering too much into subjective theory. No promises, though. Let's start in the brain. It's common knowledge that narcissists have reduced gray matter. You don't need me to tell you that executive functions are not their forte. But this lack of gray matter doesn't just affect frontal lobe functions. It also affects how the brain communicates with itself and nearly every other aspect of its interconnectivity, especially in the areas associated with the ability to think positively about oneself, which may be the root cause of why narcissists compulsively seek external affirmation. MRI technology has allowed us to see all kinds of other differences in the narcissist's brain, including in the regions responsible for learning, memory, social cognition, abstract thinking, and decision-making. With the exception of psychopaths, these changes usually develop in response to unhealthy childhood attachment to maternal figures. Children's minds are much more emotion-based than they are analytic, and literally cannot process thoughts of their caretakers being flawed or emotional. So when abuse is pervasive and unavoidable, this reality becomes too much. So as a survival mechanism, the child's brain begins forming neural pathways that bypass the amygdala, the brain's fight or flight center responsible for processing emotions. And while this does help numb pain and anxiety within the child, it also leads to a severe lack in efficacy. The brain begins excessively filtering what aspects of reality get through to the conscious mind. The child begins forgetting the core memories and traumas associated with the formation of these maladaptations. But just because the child's amygdala is temporarily bypassed doesn't mean these thoughts and emotions escape the rest of the limbic system. In fact, the trauma gets trapped there, stored in emotional processing rather than in memory recall. This is why most narcissists have no memories before the age of 8. Their entire psyche begins revolving around denial and self-deception. The child's primary goal in life becomes protecting themselves from feeling or remembering this trauma, i.e., avoiding narcissistic injury. But this childhood trauma is always there, always virulent, even if obstructed from conscious memory. This is why narcissists believe their negative feelings stem from their current external circumstance, or from whoever is unlucky enough to be in their presence at that moment. They don't need a valid reason to feel the way they do. To the narcissist, their feelings are facts. So feelings are all the proof they need. Their mood dictates their reality. If they're in a bad mood, they will become angry with you because they think it's something you're doing. Or if they act out and take unprovoked action to hurt you, they feel justified in the false belief that you must have done something much worse to them behind their back. Therefore, you deserve it. To the narcissist, there is no such thing as truth-seeking. With the exceptions of verifying perceived slights or gaining leverage that can be used against someone, narcs never think in terms of true or false, right and wrong. They think exclusively in terms of agendas and goals. The truth is whatever they need it to be at that moment to reinforce appearances and desirable narratives. Past evidence and realities become distorted, then rewritten through a lens of confirmation bias, unaccountability, and grandiose fantasy. This is why they seem to only remember your transgressions, while simultaneously oblivious to their own. Because the narcissist never truly engages with the world. Instead, they interface with the world through a false self operating on false assertions. This false self fully controls and dictates all of their psychodynamic processes. Yet no matter how hard they try, it will always remain a fictitious construct, an unfeeling operating system. Therefore, it is still the impotent, shattered true self that experiences all the malaise, anxiety, and turmoil. This dichotomy leads to a chronic dissociative state. Even yesterday doesn't feel real to them. So when you reference their previous transgressions, if they're not committing said action right then and there in the current moment, they genuinely feel it's completely unjustified for you to bring up. Because they don't identify with their erstwhile self. So they don't see it as you attempting to work through a grievance or a disagreement. They see it as you trying to hurt them. The false self makes it virtually impossible for the narcissist to think or act with any form of objectivity, or to differentiate stimulus from response, because any information that doesn't reinforce their grandiosity and preconceptions either doesn't register or is quickly forgotten. Narcissists truly are confirmation bias personified, but the narc doesn't realize they live in and foster a shared fantasy space, nor are they aware of their external locus of control. They know they have memory gaps, but their grandiosity and perceived omniscience means they genuinely believe their confabulations. Further complicating matters, the narcissist doesn't actually see or interact with other people. They only see and interact with the projections of their internal objects that represent other people. So they will scrutinize and interrogate these internalized simulacrums to obtain often grossly inaccurate information about the mental states of the people in their lives. This is why they don't understand opposing viewpoints, because everything and everyone in this world is an unconscious extension of themselves. This extreme psychological introjection combined with a lack of empathy means they genuinely can't comprehend how someone else's perception of reality can differ from theirs. Therefore, any disagreement must be you trying to hurt and/or manipulate them. The narcissist doesn't understand their own feelings either. Their all-or-nothing, black-and-white thinking, known as psychological splitting, makes them believe if they aren't all good and all-knowing, then they must be fundamentally flawed, worthless, and undeserving of love and respect. The narcissist needs to believe they are perfectly mentally sound despite never experiencing positive emotions, nor having memories of the time in childhood when they actually had access to these emotions. This lack of both internal and external reference leads them to constantly misidentify their feelings and characteristics. For example, they often see their impression management as character building or personal growth. They perceive their anxiety as indignation, mistake their cruelty and aggression for thoughtfulness. Criticism and slander are thought of as concern. Enmeshment is seen as love. Fear, regret, and discomfort get internally characterized as compassion and empathy. Splitting is also why they can't learn from their mistakes and social faux pas, because learning and personal growth require conceding that you are imperfect, that you don't already know everything and fully grasp all concepts. Critical thinking and self-reflection don't just feel insulting to the narcissist, they feel downright threatening. This is why it's nearly impossible for them to acknowledge any flaws or weaknesses. They can't risk any exchange that endangers their perfect image, including with themselves. As tragic and exhausting as this all seems, I want to make clear I am not condoning their behavior in any way, and you should never tolerate abuse. Narcs do know right from wrong, and while their intense reactions can sometimes be projections of a subconscious fear of abandonment, more often than not, these outbursts are purposeful attempts to keep us emotional and off balance. Remember, the narc's ultimate goal is to destroy your psyche and sense of self so insidiously that you never notice. Yes, you can hold compassion for them, but from a distance. Your safety should always be paramount. The sad truth is narcissists are ruled by emotions that interpret reality for them, and cluster B types will always perceive external sources as responsible for their own internal strife. They have to believe this. The alternative is too painful because splitting makes them believe any form of accountability means they are all bad. But if they can see you as the bad guy, see you as the catalyst for their problems, then at least that gives them some sense of control over their inner struggles. Remember that abuse is never your fault. This is a broken child in an adult's body coping with life the only way they know how. You don't have to hate the narcissist or regret your time with them, because being bitter and angry is the narc's fate, not yours. You still have the option of choosing gratitude. Gratitude that you have a completely different cognition with access to positive emotions. Gratitude that you don't waste all your time and energy competing with the entire planet. Gratitude that the worst is over and you'll never be that vulnerable again. Even if you were born into a toxic system, there's still millions of healthy people out there that we get to choose our tribe from. So move on with your life and live big. Do it not just for yourself, but also for those who can't. Thank you for watching.